Now it's time to talk to the opposition. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho joins me now. Very good morning to you, Claire Coutinho. Lots of issues I want to ask you about, but quickly I want to get your reaction, first of all, to Labour suspending Diane Abbott after she doubled down on comments about racism that she'd previously apologised for. I just wonder, first of all, what you make of that.
I think Diane Abbott has been it really is a matter for the Labour Party. She's been an MP for a long time. The most interaction that I've seen from her recently was her work on the assisted dying bill, and I thought she was a fantastic parliamentarian. So really that is for the Labour Party to sort out. But they seem to be having this wider purge of people because they've lost control of the parliamentary party, and they aren't able to do any of the things that they promised that they were going to do.
Let's move on to the issue of the data breach, because the more we hear about it, the worse it appears to get. How concerning would you say this latest revelation is about this leak from the MOD, now that we learned that personal details of UK special forces and spies were also compromised?
Clearly, it was a catastrophic leak. I mean, you look at what happened in a spreadsheet with incredibly sensitive information and no controls was shared when it shouldn't have been. I think we do need to look at how and why that happened.
Well, yeah, and some are now describing this as one of the worst security breaches in British history. Is this something that you think that your party should be ashamed about?
Look, I think everybody responsible needs to be looked at. I can say that, from my experience, I know other ministers, including current Labour ministers, actually looking at how the civil service use data is really important. I mean, I've got an example from my time in energy, but that's one of the biggest problems here is how could something so sensitive have been shared with such little control on it? And that's I think, something which we need to not only just look at, but make sure we've learnt the lessons from.
Did you know anything about it until this week?
No, I've been reading about it along with everyone in the press. And to be honest, I think that is right, because when you've got something which has such severe security implications, then that information is tightly controlled. When you look at national security information, it's not widely shared, partly because what you end up with is greater risk for the British people. So I think it's right that I wasn't told, but obviously looking at it, it has been completely catastrophic, as I said.
Well, yes, and because of that, the Liberal Democrats are saying that it's time for a public inquiry on this issue. Would you back them in that call?
I definitely think there needs to be an inquiry and investigation. I think everybody's agreed upon that. I'd like to see something that was quick, because as you mentioned, and as I've said, you don't want to see anything like this happen again. And I think getting to the root of how this could have happened, it should be done extremely quickly, which is not always the case when you have a public inquiry, which can be very long.
One of the other issues in the last 24 hours that has come to light is the government announcing their plans to lower the voting age to 16 in all UK elections. They are making the argument that if people can already go out to work and pay tax, then they should have a say in the running of the country. What do you make of that?
I think one of the starkest things that I saw yesterday was actually, I think it was a majority of 16 to 17-year-olds said they didn't want to have the right to vote. And I'm a new mum, so I might be just talking about it from that perspective, but that's exam season. It's, elections are usually in May, June, July, and I think 16 to 17-year-olds have enough on their plate. I'm not sure I want to pile on the pressure by dragging them into politics. But that being said, I like the idea of politicians fighting for that younger vote. I think that's a good thing. That's why the policy that we're setting out today on nuclear power is for cheaper power for generations. So it wouldn't just be this generation of 16 to 17-year-olds, but the next generation that would benefit. And I think it is important that you've got politicians really incentivized to try and win over younger people in that way. And that's exactly why we're putting forward policy today, which can cut bills, as I said, for decades to come.
Well, yes, well, on that subject, you are talking about radical plans to strip out bureaucracy and remove barriers to building new nuclear plants. The Tories, they were in government for 15 years. If nuclear is so central to our energy security, why didn't your party fix some of the issues that you say are stopping the building of nuclear plants?
We took over the energy brief in 2015, and guess who was before us? It was actually Ed Davey and Ed Miliband, and there'd been no nuclear starts for decades. So we started 2 nuclear power plants. I signed off a third.
We didn't finish any.
Well, it takes a long time when you haven't built it for years. This is the thing with nuclear. You can't have a stop-start approach, which is why I set out plans for the next 30 years when I was in post. So now that we've got nuclear building, we've got that skill set here. And, these are specialist skill sets and good jobs. They often take degrees to be able to do them. We've got that now. We've got that ball rolling. One of the things that we have seen is that those buildings of new nuclear power plants are often delayed by activists and often on nature grounds. So the point that we're making today is Ed Miliband can't cut bills with his plans. If you look at what happened last year, he signed us up to the highest wind prices in a decade, 15% higher than the cost of electricity last year. He simply cannot cut bills with the plans that he's put in place, and that is the number one priority for the country. And that's why, it's no secret that I'm pro-nuclear. I was in post and I am now. We are backing plans to make sure you can have reliable, cheap, and clean and secure nuclear power. And the way to do that is to strip out some of the bureaucracy that we've seen over the last 2 sites that have been built. We've seen, for example, in Hinkley Point C, the absurd situation where we're being forced to put in mitigation strategies to deter fish, which have resulted in an underground fish disco. Now, that can't be right. And it's also not good for nature because nuclear actually uses much less land than alternatives. It uses 3,000 times less land than wind, for example. So if you really care about nature and you want to protect habitats and you want to protect wildlife and the beautiful British countryside, which I do, then you should back our proposals to make sure it's easier to build nuclear in this country.
OK, I'll get you back another time to discuss the issue of fish discos another time. But for the moment, Claire Coutinho, we are out of time. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.